You sell any frame and you have created beautiful websites, but the moment you decide to scale your site down into breakpoint, everything wrecks apart and you'll be like, what exactly went wrong? I'll tell you for free that that site was simply not responsive. But today I'll be teaching you how you can create a responsive site in Frima. Without further wasting of time, I'm Praise anyway. You're welcome to my channel and let's get started. The first thing we're going to be looking right here is a site that is not responsive. Then we'll both analyze and find out the problem that is wrong with the design. Secondly, I'll be walking through the basis of responsiveness because you can't just open Framer and start designing without having a prior knowledge of some things you ought to know before even starting out in creating on that design board. Then thirdly, with the knowledge we got from the basis of understanding responsiveness, we then structure this page in a way that is going to be perfectly responsive without wrecking apart just like yours. That sounded more like a humor. Sorry about that if it's meant that way. Because all I wanted to say is that with the knowledge that we got from the previous module, which is understanding the basis of responsiveness, we will then apply that knowledge in making this site right here responsive. Then lastly, we'll be optimizing this responsive design into breakpoints, that is your desktop and your mobile application. So that's what we are going to be covering in this class. Let's just start right away. Starting with the first module, like we said, we'll be analyzing a site that is not responsive. Looking at this site, it looks very beautiful, it's nice, everything is going smooth, all the layout is perfectly aligned. But when you try to preview this site, you will then find out that there's actually some things wrong with the site. So let's preview this, and the moment we decide to scale everything down, the moment of truth, our site is not just responsive, everything is looking so disorganized. Me looking at this design here, everything is looking so organized, but the moment we scaled it and we previewed it, everything was just disorganized. It's just telling us that the site here is simply not responsive. So I created this example to show you guys what a site without responsiveness feels like. This kind of brings back memory when I started using Framer for the very first time. I didn't even have a clear, proper overview of how to make a site responsive. But this video will guide you on everything you need to know about responsiveness. So let's take a deeper look into this design and find out some things that we are going to be fixing. Looking at this design, let me just pick one of this layer, pick another one here. You will notice that all the elements are just on their own. They are not really grouped as it's supposed to be. Because when we are designing, we group things or we group elements into sections so that they can be organized and maintain responsiveness if we use the right resizing options. So it's just like a copy and paste work because I can just drag things around, bring this one here, and nothing really happens. So this is one of the reasons why this site was not responsive when we first previewed it. The second most important reason why this site is not responsive is because of the resizing options. So this leads me into the second part where I'll be showing you guys the basis of responsiveness. In this module, I'll be showing you guys everything you need to know about absolute positioning, relative positioning, and stack. After understanding these three terminologies, we'll take examples, and after then, we'll go into resizing options where we understand about fill, fit content, and the rest of the resizing options. So starting with absolute positioning, I'll be selecting a frame for my keyboard. So normally, if I should add a frame inside a desktop, the type is set to absolute and it gives us the ability to shift it anywhere on the canvas, which is good and fine. But if you are aiming to build a responsive design, you should limit the way you use absolute positioning, because it might seem very simple that we can just align elements, put them how we want it, arrange them. But if we do that way, we will not maintain a responsive layout. I only make use of absolute positioning when other resizing options down here doesn't give me what I want. So I just use absolute positioning most of the times to fix some elements in some places that I want to place them, which other resizing options here might not give me. Let's assume we are building a site and we want to start with the hero section. So bringing in this text, I will just select this and bring it into our text. I will realign this to the center of the frame. So using absolute positioning, like I said, we have the ability to move it anywhere on the frame, which is fantastic, but it doesn't pay well when you want to create a responsive design. Let's assume there's a need for another text on our hero section, meaning that I have to copy this head text and do whatever changes I want to. Let's just go with something like welcome to Framer, just something short. So this is it. It means that each time I want to introduce another element, we have to manually come here and resize all the elements. So this was somewhere around here, and this text goes somewhere like this. This doesn't even make our workflow efficient, and it's kind of time wasting because we cannot really measure the spacing system between elements in absolute positions. So if we were to copy this subtext again to below this place, it means we have to come again to resize everything, shift this down, shift down the new text to its position, and you will see this doesn't really make our work look really nice or neat. Going back to that design I showed you guys that was not responsive, this is it right here. I just renamed that folder as not responsive tutorial because this design is not really responsive. So you will notice that in all the elements I used here, it was all absolute position, all absolute position, and all absolute position. So that is why we weren't able to maintain this consistent and spacing system or maintain responsiveness. Going back to our design, this brings me into the second part, which is talking about relative positioning. When we are talking about relative positioning, we have to link it down to the third thing that I'm going to be talking about, which is also stack. So whenever we're introducing a relative position into our desktop or into our design, we have to talk about stack along the way. So let's move on into relative position. What is relative position? Relative position helps us to maintain a consistent design, a consistent spacing system, and also maintain responsiveness. So if we were to turn this text into a relative position, when we go down this resizing option, you will see we cannot access this relative option. And if you can remember when I said we cannot talk about relative positioning without talking about stack. So to activate relative position, we have to introduce a stack or turn the parent frame to a stack. In this case, the desktop here is the parent frame and I'm going to be selecting a stack. You head on to your properties menu, you will see this layout and click the little plus there and it will turn into a stack. Let me get rid of all these excesses that we have here. You will see everything went to the top of the desktop. This is because of the behavior of the parent stack, which is a desktop. So we can control the behavior of the element inside the parent frame from the layout option. So moving over to my properties menu, you will see this whole section here is dedicated for stack. So the reason why everything went to the top here is because it was set to start. And if we change it align to the center, you will see everything goes back to the normal position it was. We have the ability to change the gap between the elements of this frame, so we can change it to elements of 49 or 64, and you will just know that between this element and this element is 64, and between this element and these buttons here is 64. So no need to do those resizing things that we're doing with absolute position. And if we were to say, okay, let's introduce a new text into our design, you can just Ctrl D to copy, and you will see everything falls under the range of that gap that we set it to be. So we can go ahead to change it, resize our text, and let's just say we don't want this top text to be, we can just cancel that, and you see it still falls under the gap of what we set it to be, which was around 64. In this way, you are getting a glimpse of using this layout option or this resizing option to create a responsive design. We can also choose to change the direction of each element on this frame. So let's just say we don't want the heading to be at the top, we want it to be at the center. We can just use our arrow key to shift it up and down, up and down. In this way, we don't even have to touch our canvas or do much, because if you remember when we're using absolute position, for us to change the part of the element, we have to just shift the button down, shift the text down before fixing in another text. But using relative positioning makes it more easier for us to do that. This leads me to the next section, which is talking about resizing options. So I'll be showing you guys everything you need to know about fit width, fit content, fit height, fit width, all those resizing options on your properties menu. We'll be using this example to kill all those birds at once. So let's assume once again this text is on our site and we want it to be responsive, because in this way it is not responsive. So first things first, the roadmap to responsiveness is through using stack. So stack activates relative position. So we change this frame into a stack, this layout, to click the plus or use your shortcut Alt Ctrl Enter on your keyboard. So this is a stack, but yet our text is not yet responsive. So how can we make it responsive? I'll be selecting the text, heading on to my properties menu. You see set to fixed width. So this means that no matter how we expand or change the width of it, it's still going to remain at a fixed position, which is not good, but we can also change that. Let's head back to the resizing option. We will not change it to, because we have about 3 more resizing options. We have relative. You already know what relative is. They have fill and you have fit content. So to make it responsive, this is what we have to use: fill content. So let's select fill, and you see it's going to fill the whole width of the stack. If we try to resize this again, you will see that the text is fully responsive. But one more to top notch everything by changing the height to fit content. So if we should resize this again, you will see that it adopts nicely and is really responsive. We can also add padding to everything to give a breathing space. So when we just resize this, it gives us the full responsiveness that we are looking for. So with this, it gives us the ideology to now fix our main design into a responsive site. The first thing I like doing before starting any design project is to first set the desktop to a stack. So head on to your properties menu and change it into a stack. On the layout section, the direction is set to vertical because the elements are going to fall under sections. Then the distribute is set to start so that all the elements can start from the top. Then the alignment is set to center, this is correct. Then the gap, I'll change it down to 0. The next thing I like doing to maintain responsiveness is to introduce a parent frame that will house all the elements that we are going to be designing on. So F on your keyboard to select a frame. I'll be setting the width to fill width, just like I've taught you guys, and we'll be setting the height to something like, let's just go with 3000. So if you notice, the height of the permanent frame kind of exceeded the height of the main stack, which is the desktop. So how do we fix this issue? If you can remember how we use fit content, we can also apply it in this case. To select the desktop, head down to your height, and we're going to change the height to fit content. So it's going to nicely adapt to the height of the permanent frame. So if we were to change the height of the permanent frame, let's just select this and change it down to 2000 and hit enter. You see that it's going to adopt the main stack. The desktop is going to adopt to the height of the permanent frame. Let's go ahead by changing the color of this, the fill color. We're going to be removing everything. Then remember, we have not set this frame that is going to house all the elements into a stack. So go onto your properties menu and do that, change it into a stack. You can just rename this as main stack. After this, it's now time for us to break our designs into section, because if you look at this non-responsive design, because I remove all the elements outside the frame, you see we have 2 sections, the hero section and this card section. We'll be drawing out another frame inside our main stack that will house the hero section. Then after we are done with the hero section, we'll create another stack or another frame for the card section. So F on your keyboard, we are going to be drawing out a frame. You are going to change the width of it as usual to fill width. The frame is set to center. To change it to the top, because the hero section is not going to be at the middle of the frame. So to change it to the top of the desktop, you simply select your main stack, head down to your resizing option. The distribute is set to center. We're going to change that to start, so you can start from the top of the frame. Removing the fill color of the frame and cancel it here. So this, we can just rename it as hero section. You can just go ahead to copy this, paste it in our design, paste this here, and also do the same for our subtext. Let's start making this stuff responsive. The hero section here is still a frame. We have not changed it into a stack. So whatever you are doing on your design, just make sure you maximize using stack, because it can go a long way in creating a responsive design. So selecting the hero section, we'll change it into a stack right here. And you notice a little magic happening on our hero section. We didn't even touch much. By applying stack, everything just resides back as it's supposed to be. But this does not end here. We have to set all these text to fill width so that they can maintain responsiveness. So selecting the head text, head down to the properties menu. I will change the width to fill and do the same for this, change it to fill. Then also I'll be selecting the buttons and set them to fill. So in this way, nothing really changed on our design, but something actually happened on the preview button. So when we preview this one more time, you see how smooth everything folds into sections. So we have created the first section, and using stack, everything became responsive for us. We can preview this one more time and try to scale it. You see everything is responsive. Moving to the next section, I'll press F on my keyboard to bring out another frame, set the width to fill width. So I think we are going to be using much more than this. Let's just raise it down to somewhere around here. I'll be setting the resizing option of the main stack to fit content, so it can fit the content of the second section. So I'll remove the fill column of the second section. Where is it? It's supposed to be around here. So this is here. I'll be removing the fill color of the second section and change it into a stack. Don't always forget to change it into a stack. So before we add these elements inside the design, let's group them outside the design before adding them back into the frame. So this goes along with this. So we are going to be selecting a stack, Alt Control Enter. Then select the other text here and group it into a stack. The text kind of moved out of place, but we can always fix that. Go back to your layout option and change the distribute to start. Then we can always expand this down to this side. After grouping the text section, let's take our time to set all the text here to fill width. So set this to fill width. So let's do this outside the frame so we don't have much work to do when we place it inside the design. So this, you set it to fill width and this to fill width. So there we go. Then after this, we are going to group it again with the image. So select this and select the stack and group it into another stack. So you notice we are just grouping stack upon stack inside stack. It's just so that we can maintain a responsive design. So I'll be selecting this image. I'll set the image to fill. Then for the height of the stack, I'm going to change it to from fixed to fit content, so you can fit the whole content of this particular frame. Let's just go ahead to cut it, Ctrl X to cut it, and come down here, Ctrl and V to paste it in our design. You select the second section because we want this frame to be at the top here. So select the section, go on to your distribute and set it to start, and to start from the top. Then you can also choose to add a top padding to it. So to add padding to it, you go down to the last option on your layout, click padding. I'll be adding a padding of something like 100. So this is good to go. For the next section, I'll be doing the same. Group all this into another stack. So since these two elements here are having almost the same content, we can also choose to group both of them into another stack. So Alt Control Enter. We can add little gap between the elements here. The next up, we'll change each of the section to fields because over here set to fixed. So I'll change it to fill. And let me make sure the images here are set to fill. So this one is set to fixed. I'll change it to fill. The text, I'll change it to fill to. Do the same for this fill. There's no need to change the button into fill width because it's not really that significant when we are resizing our frame into another breakpoint. So let's do the same for this other section. Change the image to fill and all the text to fill. Let me just select the both and set them to fill. So that's it. Let's cut it and paste it inside our design. Ctrl X, then Ctrl and V. So are you thinking what I'm thinking? We can also group these two elements here into another stack. So select the main stack here and select the other stack that is housing these two frames and hit Alt Control Enter to select a stack. So in this way, we can actually control some resizing option between these two sections here. Having placed all the elements inside the desktop and making sure we make use of stack, fill width and all those resizing options to make it responsive. But looking at the other breakpoints, the tablet and the mobile version, you will notice things are not really going that well because these images here, they are out of sight. This one is out of sight, then this image here is totally out of sight. So how do we solve this kind of issue even when we have used tag? So this is when we can just deeply go more in search and find out what the problem is. I'll select the main tag that is housing this section. This is it here, and let me analyze something on the resizing option. You will notice here it's set to fixed, so this might even be the problem why things are going that way. So I can just change this from fixed to fill here, and you will notice that we're having changes here. The images kind of went back together on this other breakpoint. So this is actually a progress. So let's do the same thing. Select the parent frame that's housing these two sections and change the width of it to fill width. So let's preview this to see if all this we have been doing here is actually making sense. So I'll be scaling this down, and this section is responsive. Let's take a look at other section. It's actually responsive in a way, but it just needs some finishing touching to perfect this as responsiveness. So this is it. It's actually responsive in a way, it just needs some perfection. So let's go back to our breakpoint. This leads me to the last section, which is optimizing our breakpoints. But before we go into optimizing these breakpoints, this our design here needs some breathing space. So select the desktop. We are going to be changing the padding. Let's go with something like 24. So this gives breathing space between both sides of the element. Moving to this next section here, everything is kind of too close to each other because there's no enough breathing space between these elements, and we can actually solve that using stack. So select the main frame that is housing the element, go down to your layout, and we'll be changing the distribute to vertical. By doing this, you will see it's actually not solving our problem just because of one thing. So we are going to be selecting the height of the frame that is housing this element. So the height of it is set here to fixed. That's why you're not seeing the full element of the vertical position that we change it to. So go down to the height and change it to fit content, and you'll see voila, everything is looking much more better. We can also do the same for our mobile version. So go ahead and change this, the direction of it, to vertical. Then also change the height of it to fit content. So in this way, everything is kind of nice. And by previewing this and scaling this down, you see everything is now responsive. So if I should increase it and reduce it, everything is fully responsive. There you go, guys. You just had your first responsive website, or how to create a responsive design in Framer. If you like this video, smash that like button, comment down below, and you can tell me what you want to see next on this channel through the comment section. Until then, keep designing and see you guys later.